and a very warm welcome to NAPA Live. It's great to have you with us today, whether you're watching on Facebook or on LinkedIn. Thank you for tuning in. And if you're watching later on and we're no longer live, please still ask questions, please still make comments, and we'll do all we can to get back to you. So we are live, so please say hello in the chat, tell us where you're watching from and pop in any questions or comments as we go along, and we'll do our best to answer them live or follow up with you later on. I'm really excited about today's conversation. We're joined by someone who's doing some really inspiring work in the field of dementia care, Sam Dondi-Smith. Sam is the Senior Partner and Director at NaDCAS, which is the National Dementia Care Accreditation Scheme. So I'd like to say hello Sam.
Hi, Hilary.
Welcome.
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I don't think I've ever been on a live stream, before. I've done a few webinars, but I don't think they've been live, so hopefully there's no hiccups. But thanks for inviting me.
Well, you never know. Live television, you never know.
TV.
It could all go wrong, but we have a very forgiving audience at NAPA stage forward, so I'm sure it'll all be fine. So thank you for being here, and thank you also, we have to say, big shout out, because you've also agreed to be our gold sponsors for the NAPA conference. So we're really excited about that.
That's
so
going to be great
as well. So we're going to be doing lots together, aren't we?
It's going to be a really great conference, I think. I'm really looking forward to speaking. It's going to be great.
Thank you for that. So before we kind of get into the detail, I've got some questions to ask you. Would you just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background, and kind of what inspired you really to start this fantastic organisation?
Sure, thank you. So my background is a little bit mixed, really. I went to university, studied music first, and then second was occupational therapy, and that's where I really kind of got the interest in meaningful activity, but also then started working with people living with dementia. And the work that I did with the mental health team down in Kent, which is where I'm based, that was really kind of where I got inspired to support people to live well with dementia, particularly in care homes, and really where we worked with care homes and where I saw it kind of firsthand when I first worked as a support worker, but later as an occupational therapist. It was really about seeing people, for want of a better phrase, bored and in God's waiting room, and thinking, how can I help these people? How can I support these people to live a better? Continues to be my inspiration, where I kind of feel like people are moving into care homes, but not necessarily doing living really fulfilled lives. So that's really where my kind of motivation comes from. So setting up something like NaDCAS and working with some amazing, great people and organisations in building the framework has been just I guess kind of building on that passion for people and that passion for getting care teams to understand that dementia care is about people. It is about supporting people to remain engaged and independent for as long as possible. So, and that when care providers approach us and want to be doing better, it's absolutely fantastic. That's kind of music to my ears, because I'm always about how can I help, and how can I get teams to support people to live well with dementia.
Brilliant. And one of the things that really struck me, obviously, when we first kind of heard about the work that you were doing, was this kind of the vision and the mission that you have around, supporting services to kind of do their very best with the resources that they already have. I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. So this isn't always about doing more and spending more, but it's about actually how do you make the most of what you've already got. Can you just tell me a bit more about that and what's behind?
I think absolutely. I think from as an outside professional or person, and from an observational point of view, when you go into start working with care providers, and in the situation that they are in terms of their resources, it's always easy for someone like me, or for anyone that's going to, as an outside person, to say, well, if there's gaps in the care, or people aren't living as well as they can be, it's easy to say, well, you need more staff, and you need more time, and you need more resources. But often often providers they do have sufficient numbers of staff, or and they have great teams, and they have the resources, and they even have elements of a really good facilitative environment, but they don't always put it all together. And I think it's too easy for somebody an audit, anything like that, and then the outcome of that audit or that assessment is to say, well, you just need more staff. Sometimes you need the teams to understand people better, which is work that can be done. I think when you've got, if you can find people within an organisation that are passionate, and that people that you can work with to drive that change, I think when we're working with an organisation, we say, well, we want to work with you with the resources that you've got, or with the teams that you've got, then it's about developing those people, developing those teams, supporting them with the resources that they have got. Potentially, some providers have to spend a little bit on environmental adaptations and things. But from my point of view, when I go into a home, any of the case managers that work for NaDCAS, I would always be advising you've got to observe a home, you've got to understand a home and understand a provider for what they are now and what they could be over the next, say, 6, 12, 18 months. So it's, and because care homes and care providers have had that, they continually have a bit of they have a rough road. Obviously, hit people really, really badly. Morale is relatively low in some cases. For us, when we go in, we try and support a provider in a nurturing, enablement kind of enabling way to then facilitate their improvement, and recognise that they can be better if they're motivated to make that change.
Yeah. And I think alongside that maybe is that more of an appreciative approach, as opposed to, this is another inspector coming in.
I always remember going in, one of the first assessments, first visits that I made, and one of the team members said to me, "Are you on our side?" And I said, "Of course I'm on your side. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help." But then when I reflected on that question, "Are you on our side?" I thought, well, that kind of means that there might be a perception that an outside person coming in is not on your side, which I think is appalling. When there can be a fear of outside people coming in to criticize practice, rather than say, well, okay, yes, there's things to work on, but there's some fantastic things as well that you need to build on. So I think it's really important. I hope that CQC will take a leaf out of that book, because I think there are a lot of homes that have got that have a fear of the inspector coming in, and the inspector being hypercritical, and I'd much rather myself and the caseworkers case managers that work for NaDCAS go in and set it quite early on and say, we're here to support you to improve. We're not here to criticize. Yes, we can identify areas for improvement. And I think that nurturing approach is, but I'm surprised some of the feedback that we've had is that nurturing approach actually works really well, whereas the chastising and kind of fear-based approach is not going to work well. People need that nurturing and that professional eye, but that nurturing approach to develop.
Yeah. And if we're thinking about why is it that there might be some resistance to change, and then we hear people perhaps say those things like, "Are you on our side?" That really does say a lot, doesn't it, about their previous experiences? And no wonder then when they are inspected that they might be on the defensive. No wonder. So I think it's to have experiences with organisations like NaDCAS, like NAPA, which are very much about taking that appreciative approach, recognising what's going really well, celebrating that as well, not just recognising it, but celebrating it. However, actually, they need to feel that we are on their side, and care home managers have got some allies. That it's not always, because actually, how do you ask for help if you feel that you're going to be criticised? It makes it harder, doesn't it, to ask for help? So yeah, I think that comes across really well in the literature as well, and on your website, that we're in this together with, and there's kind of leads me on to say that this isn't really about a quick fix. No. That obviously the program that you have with managers, just tell us a little bit about this kind of 1 hour a week overseas.
Yeah, so for us, developing a scheme that's kind of an initial 6 months, and then we revisit a provider every year. It's about identifying providers that want to be doing well, want to be doing the best that they can with the resources that they've got, and just want to understand what kind of current best practice is. That's why we put this program together. This scheme, which starts with an assessment, and then after there's an assessment, which is a couple of days of being in a home, living, breathing what they're all about, understanding the team, understanding the people living in those homes, understanding things like care plans, and essentially kind of trying to build a picture of what that culture is. We then put a report together for the team, and when it comes to you mentioned the hour or so a week for the manager, the commitment really for managers has got to be around understanding where we think development needs to happen, and working with the team on those development areas. So we usually advise that there's a home is working towards the NaDCAS accreditation, for them to build almost like a little committee that meets once a week, maybe once every couple of weeks, to discuss the actions, to allocate actions, to make sure that things are happening, and to kind of drive it. And where our team are there to kind of will meet with the manager or whoever's leading the project with the home, and kind of review how they're progressing over a period of 6 months to start with. But there is a I wouldn't say requirement, but there's an expectation, I guess, that the manager or the person that's leading the project internally has to oversee what's happening. So look at the action plan, see what needs doing. Some of the actions might be environmental. Yes, they might be around kind of training. They might be around care planning. But we would always advise that the manager or the internal project lead will have people around them that can support them to make those changes that we're advising or recommending that they make after that initial assessment.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I've frozen, but I am here. I've tried to turn my
camera
off.
I can still hear you.
I am here. We've got a little tech glitch, I think. But
that's what happens on live TV.
Exactly. exactly. Just say over to you, Tess. That's what they say. So in terms of the kind of the journey really that you've just sort of taken us on and described, have you got any examples in terms from the services that you've worked with so far where you've seen, you know, that change? What kind of changes, what kind of outcomes have you observed, and what's the impact really been for residents and for the teams that live and work in those care homes? So
yeah, there's a couple of examples I can take you through. I think kind of broadly, the outcomes of the scheme in terms of kind of well-being for the residents and the staff or the teams. For the teams particularly, the feedback has been that they're getting more pleasure out of the work that they do, and the natural kind of inquisitive question that comes from me about from that outcome is why. And I think and one of the areas that we look at and one of the areas in the framework is understanding the person, so understanding the information, understanding the individual themselves. And it's so easily forgotten in the daily routine of care to forget about the individual. And I remember visiting a home 6 months after going to the home to start with, and I spoke with the wellbeing coordinator of that home, and he said, "I've got to show you something. I've got to come see this." And I said, "Oh, I didn't know what they were bringing up." And he brought me this book that they put together, and he said, "You never guess what?" I said, "No, what?" And he said, "This lady over here, I can't remember her name. Let's call her Mary. She was the UK's first female water skier." And I thought, Hilary's gone. I'll keep talking. I thought, that is amazing. But the thing that was more amazing was the fact that was this chap's face when he was explaining that he knew the first female water skier in the UK, and that is the difference it made when he was understanding the person that he was supporting. And that for me, that was magic. There's one kind of tiny little example of one of the outcomes.
And making that connection, I think that's the thing, isn't it? That they're making the connection between
Absolutely.
knowing the person, but actually so much more than that, actually knowing the person and then the impact that has on the people around them and how they can then engage and the difference that can make to the service that's provided in order to meet their needs. I think it's a lovely example, and everybody has something in their life to be proud of, and that they want that other people should know about.
Absolutely. And that I'm glad you are still here. I can't see you, but you're
I am here. I don't know what's going on. I do
maybe it's the screen share, but you're right. It's the fact that this you've linked it beautifully. The fact that this team member found out and was inquisitive and is fascinated and was interested in one of these ladies that he was supporting, which then led him to be able to understand her life, support, understand how to engage and interact and connect with her. And in fact, they decided, and there are some photos I think on their Facebook page, they decided to take this lady down the road to a lake and watch some water skiing. Amazing. And they wouldn't have known that. You don't know if you don't know. There's I always talk about these three things. You know what? If you know three things about someone, suddenly you can build a connection with them. But if you don't know three things about them, you can't. So you can only talk about the weather and the surface stuff. So that's kind of one tiny little example. I mean, some other providers have come back to us with things that we really didn't expect. I think with going through the accreditation program, which was reductions in falls. I was expecting and would expect things like reduction in instances of distress, because we're encouraging teams to find out more about how to support people who live with dementia and distress, but also falls. And I think that, again, that's linked to supporting teams be engaging more with the people that they're supporting, or their residents. So they're engaging them more, they're spending more quality time with them, and therefore they're identifying where those risks are, but also, you know, that social engagement and that social interaction that we want to see is impacting people's well-being and their mobility. So reduction in falls as well.
Yeah.
So
that's obviously a very important outcome, isn't it? Full stop, because we know that can trigger safeguarding concerns. It can trigger, obviously, complaints from families, from friends. Never mind the most important thing, which is about impacting the well-being of the individual. So if you see those direct links from those direct outcomes, I should say, from the process, then people can see the point of it, and managers, care providers can appreciate why you would invest in something like this, because they can see that it really does have concrete outcomes as a result. I think one of the things, obviously, that we're really focused on at NAPA around, giving people the opportunity to continue to be creative, to have the connections of things in their life that give them meaning and purpose. And I know that we've talked about this before, and you've given a really good example already, but what is it about the accreditation process in itself that kind of recognises or supports that element of life for people with dementia, do you think?
So when we're assessing a home and we're trying to understand where we can support them and what areas they need to be working on, we have it's based on our framework, which is called Reach Towards Exceptional, and within that assessment there's 140 standards that we assess a provider on, and there's four really. There's four real key focus areas that relate to well-being, engagement, and connection, which I know is such an important part of NAPA's work. So I just want to list and break down quickly those areas. So information about the person we've talked a little bit about already. It seems really, really simple, but it's surprisingly often forgotten, is try and get an understanding of the person themselves. Person-centered participation and engagement. So if you understand the person, then you can start thinking about how you can engage that person in a person-centered way. Yes, it's great to have bingo for people who love bingo. Yes, it's great to have Elvis Presley coming in and doing his thing for people who love Elvis Presley. But there are lots of people that don't love those things, and it's really, really important to try and understand, particularly when people move in, if you can, to try and get an understanding of what interests they have, and also what they can do in terms of what they can their daily living. So person-centered participation and engagement. The other area when it comes to well-being is the enabling environment. So we will look at the environment, we will look at areas, and how we will look at how the environment facilitates that well-being, and provide advice on what the home or the provider can do about adapting it. And then the other areas are approach and emotional connection. So how the team members approach people, how are they speaking, how they're communicating with them. Do they have what I would kind of determine that emotional intelligence that is required to understand and interpret people's lived experience of people living with dementia? So I don't know if that answers the question, but
it does.
That's just a few of the areas that we'd look at as part of that process when we're supporting a home. And I think that that's aligning with your values at NAPA. That, like you say, connection, engagement, person-centered participation is really, really, really crucial.
I think one of the things that comes up quite a lot for us, Sam, and I don't know if this is something that you find through the accreditation process, but is that there's such a focus on life story work, which is absolutely vital. But we all know that we're getting to know each other all the time, that people's interests change, that their likes and dislikes evolve over time, that they have a right to new experiences too. And I think, yes, it's absolutely that the connections can be new connections too, and new areas of meaning and purpose and creativity, as well as, connecting with the things that mattered to us when we were younger or before we had dementia or whatever. But actually that we're all, I'm still learning things about my best friends that I've known since uni, from after 30 odd years of friendship. We don't know everything about anybody, do we? And I think that's a really important message, because sometimes, particularly for us activity providers, will say, oh, I feel bad, I found something out about them at their funeral that I didn't know. I think, well, actually that, we're learning about, we've just got to keep the life story live. That it's not a past document, that it's ever evolving, and looking for evidence of that in this process is probably really important, because it shows that, staff, that's the relationship, isn't it? It's the nature of the relationship. It's ever evolving.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think there's a risk with life story work, is that you're just focusing on the past. I think you've got to focus on past, present, and future, and there's the other risk with gathering that information, and it's very positive that it is gathered, is that it's gathered and then it's uploaded somewhere into a care plan as a PDF, and it's never seen again. So the value that brings is only to the person that's gathered that information. So it's not necessarily shared. I think that can be a real risk. And I think with like I was saying earlier, if homes providers are gathering information at the start when somebody moves in, then yes, it is important to gather some of that historical information, but it's also really, really important to gather information about what that person can do now to try and maintain that person's functioning, and support their independence.
Yeah, I think that takes us quite nicely onto my last question, really, which is about what if there was one thing that you might change or would like to change across the sector, to improve or strengthen dementia care as a whole, what would that be? Any thoughts on what that?
It's a good question. It's one I've racked my brains about. I think the easiest one, well, it's not easy. I think the most obvious one for me is for providers to recruit people who are fascinated by people. So
that's great. I like that.
I think it's easy to say know the person, collect life story for everybody, but I think when the team is really a home's greatest asset in supporting that person, and I think if you're recruiting, and recruitment is, obviously there's lots of issues with recruitment and finding the right people, but if you can find people who are fascinated by people and are fascinated by connection and by engagement, then the care and the jobs or the tasks of care will come. I think if you're just recruiting people merely on their paperwork and their skill set, then there's a risk that you're not always recruiting people that are people if that makes sense. So I think if I could, there's lots of different things that could make massive changes in the sector, but I think if you're thinking the team is the main asset, then if you can recruit team members who have already got that fascination and that interest and that want for human connection and relationship, then they're gonna build that culture.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that. So we're up against it with the time, unfortunately. I'm sorry that platform's decided to pause my face, but it's no bad thing. But I am here. We have had a couple of questions come in, so
Okay.
just quickly answer a couple of these. So one
Yep.
of them is from Rhiannon. So she says, "Can you tell us how working through the NaDCAS framework might help teams feel more confident and inspection ready?" Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So part of the process for teams going through the accreditation is around it is first us observing them in kind of delivering their care, if you like, and then providing that feedback. And when team members have got back to us after receiving that feedback, they have adapted their communication, they've adapted their approach, their responsiveness towards people, particularly people who are experiencing distress on a regular basis. So I think when it comes to confidence, I do think that and this could go on forever, but there isn't enough good training out there around supporting people who training and understanding of supporting people who are living with more advanced dementia and distress. So I think going through this program, they will feel more confident in those areas.
Thank you. I think that direct feedback really that's what gives people confidence that you're really taking the time as well to understand and observe their practice. I can see why that would impact on their confidence, because it's not, yes, looking at the paperwork is important, but you're actually spending time observing their practice and with them and understanding the setting that they're working in, the people that they're working with.
Yeah, and there's a real vulnerability there, which I totally respect. I think anybody that's gone into a home and has kind of observed people, then I think you always have to be mindful that you're seen as the observer, and people who you are observing will feel and can feel vulnerable, but them allowing you to do it is a privilege. So you've got to make the most of that, and then be as supportive and nurturing as possible when you're providing that feedback.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much for all of that. It's just so interesting. How do people get their hands on the framework? What do they need to do to get in touch with you?
So they can get the framework on the website, which is there's a banner on the bottom of the screen there, NaDCAS.org. We can send any care provider a copy of our framework, and there's also a quiz on the website as well, so you can kind of test your best practice quiz on the website as well. So go and do that, and we can send out either digital or physical copies of the framework for people to read.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. And just a couple of last minute bits of news from NAPA. Obviously, we've mentioned the conference, so we're very, very excited about the conference. Conference tickets are selling fast. 23rd of January, 2026. It sounds a long way away, but it really isn't. It's just round the corner. Please get your tickets. You get to hear Sam talk again and to meet him in person. So do come and see us. We will be launching our year of for 2026, which is the year of culture. So that is very much about how we appreciate individual stories, identities, but also how we make sure that people still have opportunities for cultural participation and experiences. So lots to come and hear about, and to see each other, share your experiences, see your friends and make new ones. So very much looking forward to the conference. Thank you very much again, Sam. Lovely to see you. I'm sorry we had a little tech issue with this, with my screen. For those of you, if we didn't get to anybody's questions, we will get back to you. So thank you all very, very much. But bye for now. Thanks, Sam.
Bye for now. Bye. See ya.